You're listening to the Classic Gamers Guild podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Classic Gamers Guild podcast. I'm your host, Anna. I'm here with another one of our hosts, Sarah, and today we are talking about the music in our favorite classic computer games because I don't have enough broad general music knowledge about music to just talk about every and any video game randomly. So I've kind of taken probably a few that I've talked about quite a few times in the past and picked my favorite pieces from them. I don't know about you, Sarah. Hey, how's it going?
It's going good. Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Absolutely. I thought maybe we could touch on, I start at the beginning. So if we could go back to when you're first playing it doesn't have to be your first computer game ever, Sarah, but a computer game, the first one that you played where the music kind of struck you, or there was something about it that was special, or something that you remember about it early on in your gaming life.
Well, I think it started for me with King's Quest IV when we got a Sound Blaster card.
Ooh.
And I heard the computer playing more than one note at a time, and it blew my tiny mind. I think I was about, 8 or 9. And yeah, it was incredible. And that composer's name is now slipping my mind. And now I have to turn in my King's Quest IV card because that's my favorite game. But it was just really beautiful. I think that was the first time I realized that a game's score could be cinematic and really convey a mood rather than just being kind of a lot of beeps and bloops.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought it was so pretty. I really loved that. Do. I mean, so that just kind of captured me, and then all the little themes within, and it was lovely.
It really was. And it's funny that you'd mentioned that because that's sort of the first game that really struck me, but on the PC speaker because I didn't have a sound card yet. I'm not popping this out of my head, guys, but it's William Goldstein that did the composing for King's Quest IV. And that I had to look that one up. I'll totally admit that. But yeah, amazing. Even coming out of the PC speaker, there's a couple of pieces that I'm going to bring up during this episode that kind of that have stuck with me just as they are. When I think back in my head and I remember the game, that's what I'm hearing in each scene is the PC speaker. And it wasn't until I was a grown up that I was like, oh, ad-lib, that's really cool. Ooh, Roland, that's really pretty. I didn't even hear them till way later on.
So along that vein, I think the other one that made a good early impression on me was playing King's Quest II on the PC Junior, and which could play 3 whole notes at the same time, and that was a big deal.
Harmony.
And yeah, just that green sleeves with King Graham walking by in the front in the beginning. The front, what I meant by the front was the beginning of the game.
Yeah,
the front of the game.
The front end. It's like your programmer talk. Really. Is it? I'm not
exactly.
a programmer, but it sounds like it could be programmer talk. So
no, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, it just the first time music really kind of made it more tense, like that do 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 when the wizard comes into the screen, or Hagatha, and you're like, oh no, I gotta get out of here before she turns me into a frog or something. I actually don't even remember what she does, but I remember the dwarf would steal all your stuff.
Yeah,
and I think
doesn't she turn you into a frog? Yeah, I'm not.
She turns you into a frog, and doesn't he just make you disappear?
Yeah, the wizard just makes you disappear. The dwarf steals your stuff in the other one, but.
It's like the first time, that kind of music. And then, of course, the sting when the troll enters the picture in King's Quest IV. I mean, that was like the first time in a computer game where music just filled me with abject terror.
So, shit. And it's like, oh yeah, it still affects me to this just very day because you know why? Because you had to hear it so many times, and so I end up personally, like, I feel frustrated. I feel like, oh my god, I'm scared that he's going to come again. I'm anticipating getting through because I've gotten farther, and then there's that very first moment when you hit the chasm. You think you're just about through, you think you're getting something, and somewhere, and you fall. Then you have to figure out a whole new puzzle at the same time, and you're like, I sure hope you were like save scumming as you were getting from zone to zone, and that you save scummed in the right place, because you can get trapped in the wrong part of the cave where you can't escape if you go the wrong way behind the shadows. And I was playing it on amber monochrome screen. So it was like the music was such an intense part of the experience, maybe also in a way to replace the colors that weren't there. Like it was all encompassing in a really cool way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That sounds like a familiar experience. I haven't had the amber monochrome experience yet, and actually, that reminds me, I still need to do that. I have my IBM 5155 downstairs, and I think the version of King's Quest IV I have will run on that thing. So,
I got
I
to see
mean,
that. That's adorable.
yeah. I think I might have loaded it up once, but I haven't actually played through, so that's something I still need to do. You haven't actually played King's Quest IV until you've had the Anna experience, so
Yeah,
that's
get
what
out
I
that
hear.
amber monochrome, pop on the beep boop speaker, sit
Mhm.
back and prepare for a wild ride.
Yeah. So
Well,
what's
yeah.
our next category?
So I want to start broad, and then I want to like zero in, because I feel that that's going against the grain a little bit. So I want to go with like favorite overall soundtrack. If you were like, man, I just, and you can go mood based. You don't have to be like, this is the favorite one I listen to always every time. You can be like, this is my favorite one to listen to in the fall, or this is my favorite one I want to listen to when I'm driving in the car, but just some time and some soundtrack that really hits you in some way.
I didn't even really have to think about it. That's Gabriel Knight 1.
Ooh,
No
nice choice.
question. No question for mood, musicality, emotion. I love it. Robert Holmes is awesome. We all love Robert Holmes.
Yeah.
Awesome person, awesome composer, and that one is just it for me.
That is a beautiful. I didn't experience that game till later on, but the music is a whole part of the whole ride. I mean, because you've got your amazing story that's like that's building into such like so many complex layers, and the music's intertwining with it. And because everything's already super layered and super complex, the music can like get to you in a way in a game like that it wouldn't in maybe a game that was a little bit lighter and didn't have as like deep or as heavy of the parallel storylines that are running in a game like Gabriel Knight.
Hmm. So, what about you?
Uh, I've bounced back and forth between a few ones because different games hold different memories and different soundtracks feel different ways. And of course, I could say King's Quest IV, but I'm going to go like right into like the more rocker side and say Quest for Glory for Aubrey Hodges did such a great job matching the mood of the music to the tone of the game. And it was the first time it was kind of rock in a game that I'd played. Like there's imagined guitar, and it was really sort of wild and out there, but also really peaceful and attainable. So and a lot of the tunes stick with me, like Leshy, like do 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 do. Do, 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 do. Anyways, like all of those really they get in my head and they come back to me quite often.
It really is a perfect marriage between that story, which my understanding is it was mostly Laurie's story. Does
A
that sound
lot
about
of
right?
Yeah, I think she did it like I think Corey was more involved in four than he was in three. Three was primarily her game,
Right.
but
Okay, maybe I was
four,
getting those mixed up.
yeah, but at the same time, I think that was kind of her skill, right? The story
Mhm.
and the lower writing and things like that. I think a lot of that stuff was her
Mhm.
overall. And anybody's welcome to write in and correct me. I'm still waiting for that sort of thing
Yes.
to happen. Just write in and say something. Yes, you were right.
Corey, if you're listening and we're totally wrong, you can write us an angry letter,
Oh, and a long
and
one.
you
Make
can
it
address that straight to Anna.
super wordy. Yeah.
And um, but what I was gonna say is that that's just really the perfect marriage of story and score.
Mhm.
And I'm guessing that you've heard Aubrey Hodges reorchestrated score on Bandcamp.
Mm-hmm.
It's wonderful. I mean,
It's the
he did a
real
lovely job.
it's the rock that it was. It wasn't obviously because it was like MIDI, or it was like a digital soundtrack, and then he took it and then he kind of like redid it and made it something that anybody would listen to, like not even knowing it was attached to a game.
Mm-hmm. I love the addition of the guitars, and it's cool now that there is. I mean, back in the day, it was a space issue. Obviously, you can't make You couldn't make full recordings and get those on of real instruments and get those onto floppy disks. But now composers are reorchestrating and re-recording some of their older soundtracks so that they can sound probably a little closer to what they had in their heads when they were originally composing.
Mm-hmm.
And now MIDI is so much more sophisticated sounding that those same soundtracks with different instruments that are synthetic even can
Mm-hmm.
sound closer to probably what they imagined originally.
Yeah, it's true. Well, I mean, take for example, my 11-year-old's favorite music is the Mick Gordon. He did the music with Doom and a bunch of stuff, and he did just some really cool work with like sine waves and modulations and all that kind of stuff, and effect pedals, and just putting on all these like cool real world kind of wild sounds to make such like an effective game. Not that I've played a huge amount of that game, but kids know, like anytime I've gone to them, I'm just like, and I mean, your kid will eventually do the same for you. I'm like, hey, I want to sound really cool when I'm doing my podcast. So I'm going to ask you a question, right? They're always like, oh yeah, we know. And then, they always have cool answers for me. But a
Yeah,
music,
Alice is a
go
little
ahead.
too young to help me out with that right now, so I don't get to be cool for a while yet.
You're getting there. Well,
Yeah.
music guides them. I know, like my 11-year-old finds the music before he finds the game. So he'll get like
Mhm.
somebody on YouTube who just plays a bunch of game music on, say, the piano, or like, where it keeps getting faster and faster and more difficult, or one of those videos. And then through that, he'll find a game. He just did that with Undertale, which he surpassed
Oh.
where I was, and then finished the whole game, and is now doing like his genocide run, because he's all like cool now. But the first one was a pacifist run that he did. Anyways, whatever. I don't know. I probably just did a bunch of spoilers for people. I'm sorry. But the point is, music is what guides him to these games, which I think is pretty cool. The new generation, and the ability
Mhm.
that they have to kind of like openly experience something from any angle.
That's really interesting that that's where he starts,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
and
for
then
a
he finds
lot
the
of
music, and then
games.
he plays the game.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, you know what? That's how I discovered gray matter. I was
Ooh.
listening to Robert Holmes's and Roger Hooper's album, which I always, without fail, want to call a little night music, and that's a musical, and I have no idea because it's called A Simple Refrain.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason in my head, I'm always like, oh, yeah, their album, A Little Night Music. That is not right. So for some reason, that's just kind of the way it is in my head. But anyway, I was going through the different pieces and listening to them, and, ones that I really liked that I'd never heard before. And I was like, what's gray matter? And so I looked it up and went, okay, I'll give this a go. It sounds fun. And I loved it so much. So yeah, I guess sometimes that the music can be a route to a game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That's very true. It never happened to me that way. Actually, at all. Hey, you know what music hits me in my head all the time is the music from when you go into the mine at the dwarfs in King's Quest 4, when you're giving them back the diamonds, or just whenever you go in there, just like that working song that they have. It's adorable, right? But I get that one in my head all the time.
You know what's funny is that I've played that game 1,000 times, and the only thing I can hear in my head is the King's Quest 5 town music.
Oh,
And
I love that music.
I was like, wow, that's a quirky little piece. Let me see if I can kind of call that up, and the record player of my mind, the little jukebox box arm reaches down and it just grabs that record and won't grab any other. And so now that's just kind of what's going on there. So we'll see if I can remember any other tunes, because that thing's like a virus. Once it gets started, I mean, it just kind of takes over.
Okay, well, here let's hit up our most nostalgic piece then, which is kind of like the favorite, but it's the one that you would listen to kind of take you back in time, or would remind you in particular of the early days of gaming, but just a piece, not a full soundtrack.
Okay, this is a little bit of a tough one. I've touched on a couple already.
Well, here, I'll answer
Why
while
don't you?
you're
Yeah, you go
thinking
first.
about it. Yeah, because mine's a toss-up. It's between Quest for Glory 1, EGA's Arena's piece, when you're just kind of lying there
Ooh.
by the tree and it's just all like super chill vibes, and there's magic and good things happening and potential for more, especially if you're like already a magician, right? So I like that one a lot. And the house cleaning music from King's Quest IV, because it's like the soundtrack to my life. And I'm going to throw in for good measure the stable music from Quest for Glory 1 also. Those three, just they bring me back, and I like to use them as ringtones on my phones or in everyday things around me, because I don't know, I like to hear them.
Cute.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have to let me know if you've got some ringtone files lying around somewhere.
Oh, I do. I'll send you a stack. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Okay, awesome. Well, now that I'm thinking about it, I think one that kind of takes me back for some reason, and I don't know really why, because I didn't play this one a ton as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, there's actually two. The town music in Quest for Glory 4.
Yes. Oh, so good.
And the sound of the door closing as you come out of the inn at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of that creak slam.
I heard it in my head when you said it. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And I'm sure with the audience that we have, everybody just heard that creak and that slam in their heads too.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that one. And then the other one probably is the introduction music from King's Quest VI, sort of the part where he takes off on the ship
Mm-hmm.
to go and, find his love, find Cosima.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, so just kind of that setting out on adventure music. I think that's probably the one. And I'm super, oh, hey, speaking of plugging vinyl projects, which we were,
Mm-hmm.
Eric Elsom of Magic Map Studios is currently working on reorchestrating King's Quest VI. And that vinyl campaign will be up when he is done. It's going to be a while, but so he's the one who reorchestrated and released King's Quest V, Songs of Serenia, which is just now making its way into backers' hands. I got my copy yesterday.
Ooh,
And it is,
congratulations.
oh my gosh, it is beautiful.
I've seen the pictures have started rolling in. It's super exciting.
It's gorgeous, and I'm just so excited to finally have that. And if you're listening and you want to hear a little bit more, you can you can go to Magic Map Studios on Bandcamp and listen to the tracks there.
Mm-hmm.
And you can follow him on Twitter, I think Instagram, and he's got a Facebook page. So he's everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He's inevitable. He's
And
unavoidable. No,
he's the
just kidding.
biggest King's Quest fan ever. I mean, him and you,
yeah.
Sarah, might have to fight it out. I don't know. But yeah, I'd
I
say
know.
definitely way up in that top 5 kind of a region.
No, so we love Eric. He's a fabulous guy, incredibly talented, and we are very much looking forward to the King's Quest VI campaign. So,
Mm-hmm.
yay!
Yay, yes, definitely. While we were thinking, I also thought of the sound of Quest for Glory 4 when it first starts, because I got that terrible like crash when you're sliding down, and I couldn't play the game, that exception error, and it was there for ages. And I remember starting the game and trying to play it, and you get that "Ow, ow, ow," behind the music, and the like,
Right.
and I hear that so often, but it reminds me of also frustration because of how bad I wanted to play the game. But it's also the best feeling in the world when I finally got it running and I was able to play the game after hearing it. So it's like high on emotion and nostalgia for me because of those reasons.
Oh, I can see that. Quest for Glory. I didn't really play Quest for Glory 4 all the way to the end, really, until adulthood. So I actually, by the time I got to it, didn't really have those issues. But I do remember issues with the end of Quest for Glory 3. There was that out of hunk.
Oh, you got the out of hunk error.
I got the out of hunk.
No, I didn't get that one, but I heard about it. I'm so sorry.
That was infuriating, but that's just
was it
kind
like
of
a
part of the
memory
whole
thing or something? I don't remember what it was connected with.
I don't know what it was, but it's just part of the whole classic gaming experience.
You're like, I didn't know I needed a hunk to play a video game.
I didn't have a
Jeez.
hunk at the time, so,
Exactly. We're just kids. What do you expect from us, right? I do wonder what the demographic was. Like, okay, does anybody know the answer to this? Maybe you even do. I don't know. But like when, say, Quest for Glory 3 came out, what was the specific demographic for that game? Like, I'm guessing because we were
Huh.
young. We were on the young end of playing it. Was it, and I know it wasn't like geared towards 11 to 14-year-olds. So was there a bunch of 21-year-olds that were also playing it? Because like so many people that we know in Guild are like now currently born between 75 and 85, it seems. Not everybody, but like a lot of
So
them.
maybe it was kind of aimed at teen audiences a little bit more.
Because it is kind of like cartoony and gamey, but then there's Leisure Suit Larry when you're like, oh, only focused on adult audiences, obviously.
Right. So that was a completely, I'm not a, I'm sure there was some overlap, but yeah. We played the games I think that were a little bit on the younger side, and I didn't play some of the older games until I was quite a bit older. So I think my experience was a little bit different, but I think Quest for Glory was about as hard edged as I got when I was a kid,
Yeah. Yeah, it was not an easy series, but one that stuck with me very, very quickly. I was eager to eat all of them up and to play them as every character type, even though, like, I didn't clue into the hybrid character so much when I was growing up until I was older, like some of the other things you could do with the game. So obviously, I would
Mhm.
miss stuff.
I actually probably didn't have the focus to play through with every single character. I think I played through certain games with every single character, but I never did the import thing or anything like that.
Mm,
I wasn't really a meticulous go through the game and play every single facet of it kind of person. I was more like
right.
a just barrel through the game and just knock stuff over and not do it right. And that was kind of my style. And it sort of is still my style in some ways, but
I thought it was until you started saying that. And then I'm looking over my playing of that series and I'm like, no, no, I wanted to click on everything, do everything, know everything, play as everything. And I was really obsessed. Like something about that game captured me in a way that I wanted
Mhm.
to know all of it. I don't know why. I don't know what it was about the game. Well, I do. I mean, obviously it was a cool game, but I just, yeah. It's funny looking back on ourselves, right? And being like, I'm going to analyze young Anna and see what kind of a gamer she was. And it's like, who are you to even like make an assumption that I was this, that, or the other? And it's like, oh, you're older. You think you know. Well, you're just old and you can't even finish a game without a hint book now. So, like, I could argue with young Anna all day. She's sassy, right?
I don't know. She sounds like she could kick your
I
ass.
think she could kick my ass. My dad said I knew everything when I was 3 years old, and I'm pretty sure he's right. I've
So you
forgotten
were
it ever
you were a
since.
three-nager?
I was, yeah, no, I knew it all then. I've been forgetting it ever since, and now I'm in my 40s, and there's just not that much left, except for.
Yeah, I know. I used to know everything too. It's
Did you?
amazing.
Oh man, it was
Right?
great.
Yeah, I know. It was
I see
great.
it in the kid now. He knows everything now, and you should see how surprised he looks when
Mhm.
things don't go his way during, like, say, a strategy game or something. He's like, "But that should have worked. I knew it would work."
Well, I guess you don't know
Yeah.
everything, but hey.
Nope, not at all. Okay, so the other one that I wanted to talk about next was, let's see, let's see. These are things I all thought I could mention, but they're not actual subjects. Okay, music and games took music directly from popular historical culture. Okay, we can go into that. So I was thinking, because this was my subject, I'm like, let's talk about the influence. Because my mom often, I'll be listening to a soundtrack from a game and she'll be like, oh, I recognize this as this classical piece or this other classical piece, but of course I don't know. So I'm going to stick with like one of the game, the music pieces you mentioned earlier, as some of the more simple ones like Greensleeves. Like, I don't even know some of those songs are a part of popular culture until when I'm older and I'll hear it somewhere and I'm like, oh yeah, that's the song from that game. And they're like, no, no, that song's like 300 years old or whatever. You must come across stuff like that.
I think so. That's the only example that I can think of at the moment. But when you're kids, the
Hmm.
place that you encounter it is always, well, that's where it came from. Well, no, actually, this piece of media borrowed it from another piece from, from yes, classical piece of music or whatever
Mm-hmm.
now, and I'm going to show very, very clearly that I'm the parent of a toddler when I say that we've been watching a lot of Bluey lately, and the composers for that TV show take a lot of influence from classical music. You hear
Mm-hmm.
Ode to Joy or Pachelbel Canon in different pieces, kind of woven into the score for the show,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that kind of stuff is really cool. And this isn't a game related thing either, but there is a my favorite version of the Phantom of the Opera. Hi, Rick. Are you listening? I'm talking about Phantom of the Opera, which is your favorite. But one of my first exposure to the Phantom of the Opera story. I can actually relate this to games because there's a great game called Return of the Phantom that deals with the story of the Phantom of the Opera. But
Mm-hmm.
my very first exposure to that was the Walter Murphy disco concept album,
Oh my
which is,
goodness, that title's
oh,
brilliant.
it's so fantastic. And it's every bit as amazing as it sounds. But what they do is they start with the toccata and fugue in D minor, and it's a disco version of it. And then there's also Moonlight Sonata is another piece that gets woven into it. And there are others as well. And so you have all these kind of disco pieces, but then with classical music kind of creeping in. And if anybody hasn't listened to that, that's listening
Mm-hmm.
to this, you included, Anna, you need to go find it. It's
I will.
delightful and so, so silly.
Oh,
And it's
that's lovely.
wonderful. But
That's lovely. Well,
to
just
bring,
you go. Oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, if you're, are you bringing a point home? Go ahead.
I was just going to kind of bring it back to classic gaming
Mm-hmm.
and say that, yeah, you do have things like green sleeves. And I am trying so hard to think of something that is in another game right now, and I know it'll hit me later. But hey, if you're listening and you're thinking, oh, yeah, X game has this piece of classical music in it. Outpost, Anna.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Outpost had the planets. Pulse the
Mm-hmm.
planets.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Because I
That's a
remember
good
very
one.
specifically hearing the Mars piece in that. That's another example.
Ooh, good one. Yeah, Jupiter's my favorite. I like that one. That's a really nice one.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good piece.
Yeah, yeah. My son got into a lot of that. He's into classical music and stuff. Well, it's funny because when I do art with the family, we do drawings together, and my mom will often put on classical pieces, and it happens all the time. My son will look up and be like, "That's a piece from Civ 2, say, or from Heroes of Might and Magic. That's a bit of the piece from there." I'll be like, "Oh, I totally recognize this from Quest for Glory 3." And it's just little
Mhm.
bits of it, like little tiny pieces, here and there, and you can hear that little bit of influence, and it's so much fun finding the hidden gaming that is out from in music from before the games existed. So it's like a backwards Easter egg.
Yeah, I like that. It's a backwards Easter egg.
Yeah. So, and like speaking of that, like ambient music, like the background music in games where you spend a lot of time with them in turn-based games, like the Heroes Might and Magic or Panzer General or Heroes like a Civ, any of the Civ games, any game where you're kind of sitting and taking your time, you're hearing the music in the background oftentimes over and over and over, not just like to fight or for certain movements, but just classical pieces, and they're often quite
Mhm.
complex and really beautiful. My mom will often say from downstairs if she hears it, "Hey, what composer is that?" And
Mhm.
it people don't like, no offense to most people, but they're like, "Oh, music in video games like buzz buzz beep," but it's like, no, this is like on par with the real music from the real world that real people listen to also. Like there's some really beautiful stuff.
It's true. I was just thinking, actually, in terms of classical music influence and classical music popping up in games, Return of the Phantom does have a lot of classical music in the
Hmm.
background.
Hmm.
And I think it's legitimate. I don't know how much was composed for the game in kind of a classical style, but I believe it actually does incorporate specifically classical music into the score. And they
Hmm.
probably did that as a way to save money, but also because it's public domain. But
Hmm. Hmm.
also it goes well with the story. So and now that you kind of mention it, now they're kind of starting to pop up. But
Hmm.
um yeah.
Yeah, it's out there. Like you kind of gave a nod to the idea in the beginning of the episode when it's like before a soundtrack, it was kind of like a hidden fun quirk if you could find the files that played the music on your discs. Like it could happen, like you were able to, but generally no, that sort of thing wasn't just included. So the fact that when you do buy a game, say, Stardew Valley or Undertale, and you're like, I just want to download the soundtrack and listen to it on my MP3 player in my car or wherever else, is a pretty cool privilege to have now too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
love that.
sometimes you could just play a CD, right? If you had the right CD and the right game. Like in that era where it was on CD, oftentimes they would include the soundtracks with it in that way.
Oh, Quest for Glory 5. I played the trash out of that. Chance
Man,
Thomas, that's a great one.
That game gets shit on all the time, but my goodness, do I love the music in that game, and just the guitar playing, the vibe of Samaria, the way that they were able to like put the background music in, like it's the ocean and it's the birds and it's Greece and it's, the people talking. It was all so seamless, and where everyone's like, oh, it was kind of like a harder game to look at. I think, a lot of people are just offended. Well, maybe that's the wrong word, by the difference in that game. But when you put it all together and take 10 minutes to just adjust to what it looks like, and you put it together with the music, it is a beautiful, engaging, complex game with so many variables. It's not even funny. It's crazy. It's such a great game.
It really is. And I was shocked when I learned that people don't like it. I had no idea.
No, I'm just what? I didn't even know people didn't like Cedric, though. So call me naive. I thought he was awesome.
Well, I don't know that I thought that, but I did. No offense to Richard Aronson if he's listening right now, but
oh, he doesn't take offense. I think he's
okay.
Just like, yeah, well, because Roberta created the character. He's like, I did the character. It's like he was supposed to be like an annoying 5-year-old know-it-all kind of child that would never go into danger or put himself into danger, and that's kind of the character they created. I'm like, yeah, you were successful, just like that. Yeah,
you're like, well, you know what? You did it. You brought that character to life.
Right, for real.
But I played and I really thoroughly enjoyed Quest for Glory 5. I love the soundtrack. I just had a blast with that game. And then when I got into the Classic Gamers Guild and saw some of the conversations every now and then about how people didn't like it, I was just, what? It's great. What's the problem? And I didn't even have a hard time with the graphics. I was like, okay, we're doing 3D now. Cool. Whatever.
Exactly. And that's when I played it at the time, I didn't notice any of that, because every Sierra game you and I have ever played have broken the barrier of what a computer game could be. So in no way did I ever expect that 4 would be like 5 or 5 would be like 4 or anything else. Like I knew it would be.
It just sort of feels like a strange expectation if you kind of look at the progression of different Sierra series. I mean, Gabriel Knight was a different style game graphically from game to game.
Yeah.
No two in that series look alike. I will say that, as far as 3D games go, I didn't love Mask of Eternity. I feel like that one I struggle looking at for various reasons. But, when people bring up Quest for Glory 5, I'm just like, maybe some of the close-ups looked a little funky, but whatever. I mean, I thought overall it looked good and played well. I had a lot of fun with it. So, I mean, to each their own, I guess.
Yeah, I can hear some of the noises from Mask of Eternity, that like I don't know, that noise when things happen and it's like kind of scary. And then I can hear like a couple of the noises come back to me, but like none of the music from Mask of Eternity comes back to me. Like when I think about the ambience background stuff, that one's not as much.
How about a game? So here is a category off the top of my head. How about a game where you enjoy the soundtrack, but you can't play it? Like it just, the game itself doesn't grab you, but the soundtrack does. So it's almost like the game in your head is better than the one that was actually written.
Yeah, I could, let's see. Something like, hey, you get the funky, jazzy soundtrack in a game like Les Manly. either one of them that you put in. So it's like the Leisure Suit Larry knockoff. The music is actually reasonable. It's very jivey. It's very like, there's absolutely nothing wrong really with the soundtrack. It's not even like super copycat like or repetitive, unlike the game, which is like a little bit out there and esoteric. And it's not like I can't play it, but if I was, I'd probably rather pop on the soundtrack than actually play the game 90% of the time.
Now, not being familiar with this, can I just take you back? Les Manley?
Yeah, Search for the King is
that then?
First one, Lost in LA, the second one.
Okay, and he's supposed to be kind of a Leisure Suit Larry knockoff?
Yeah, except it's
named Les Manley?
Yeah, you get the joke, right? Yeah, and anyways, you think it's going to be all hot babes, but it's like, I don't know, there's a lot of like, what is that word for it again when the puzzle doesn't make sense? I'm word dropping.
Moon logic?
Yeah, the whole game there's a lot of moon logic, and it doesn't quite go there. Like Leisure Suit Larry kind of goes there a little bit, and the Les Manley games don't quite. And it's not that they're absolutely terrible, right? They did okay, but it just seems like a wannabe game more than anything. But yeah, great music. How about you?
Yeah. You know, and I have to preface this with, if I say that, you know, I don't like a game, or I think maybe it isn't everything it should be, I just need y'all to know that I can't make a game like any of the games that I'm picking on. So I try very hard not to do that very often. Also understanding that there are huge teams of incredibly talented people working on all of these. And so who am I to criticize? That said, the one for me, I actually really like the Mask of Eternity soundtrack. And I struggle with the game. I think it was kind of just hard to play, and it was kind of hard to look at. And I understand that they were trying to go a different direction with it. I appreciate the expansion of lore and the backstories of the characters that, you know, I watched a retrospective and learned a little more about it. It's not for me though, but the soundtrack is really pretty. There's some really nice pieces. I really love. I'm trying to remember the names of the pieces.
See, maybe I should go back and review this soundtrack, because like the last time I heard it was the last time I played the game, right? Years and years and years ago.
There aren't a ton of different pieces that really stand out, but the ones that do are quite lovely. So there's like a piece that is a fountain. There's something about a fountain, and I really can't recall the name of the piece, and I'm not going to try and sing it all here for you, but there's also wandering kind of through Daventry. Anytime you go into a house with some of the people that are frozen, there's like a theme that plays. It's really pretty with guitar. And both of those pieces actually were covered on King's Chill 2, and really interestingly too. So go find, well, I can't tell you to go find the original because I don't know what they're called. But maybe we can add that to show notes or something, and then, you know, I can make some recommendations. But I just go check out the whole soundtrack and kind of flick through it, and there are some really pretty pieces. We'll just kind of leave it at that.
Okay, yeah, I'm just looking through. Not that I can name the one specifically, but I can recall some. Right, the Dimension of Death theme, and you've got the Lord Asriel. Right, okay. Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to give this a go. Even reading the names makes me a bit nostalgic. I have, as I've mentioned on this podcast before, but because everybody likes familiarity, because we're into retro gaming and classic gaming and nostalgia, we'll hear it again. I liked King's Quest VIII in that, unfortunately, at the time, I've grown up. I'm not like I used to be, but at the time I was somewhat disappointed in King's Quest VII because I found it a tad too easy and sort of more in a Disney direction, which at the time I wasn't super into. I was more into action and like Quest for Glory. So when Mask of Eternity came out, I'm like, oh man, this is like, as close to Quest for Glory as King's Quest is ever going to get, and I'll take it. So I thought it was longer to get a hold of the controls, and it was, maybe now it looks a bit
Mhm.
odd, but at the time I thought it was a lot of fun. I played it, I liked it, I finished it. I didn't realize you could play it
Yeah.
naked with a fig leaf. I've learned that now, but
That we have learned since then. Um, but yeah, I mean, and that's the thing is that, when there's a game that maybe I don't love, someone else really enjoyed it. And maybe there's a game that you didn't love, someone else really enjoyed it, So, I mean, I kind of tend to land uh, sometimes on it's not for me. There are some games out there that I think are probably objectively not very good. But, again, I try to have a bit of grace for all kinds of circumstances that surround the development of games. There's just a lot of stuff that goes on that sometimes changes things or makes them difficult to get out. I have a lot of respect, though, for creators and what they do. So again, I try to go easy on the criticism.
I'd feel more comfortable criticizing a LucasArts game, even only because I feel here's a bunch of people that have money that don't really have a timeline, that are just told not to lose money, that make games and they're great and they're awesome. But like Sierra, you've got the whole kitchen table start and all that, adorable, like starting from nothing and becoming something dream that makes me super hesitate to, like you say, criticize anything that particular company did. So I'm like, yeah, whatever, fine, accolade. I'm on to you, or, LucasArts. Yeah, you're on my hit list. And it's, not that I have any reason to like pick them out in particular, but I'm like, well, I can't say it about Sierra. And I've been told I'm not supposed to be super 100% nice about everything all the time on this show. So I got to pick on somebody.
I think that, well, and this is a little bit of a side journey here. We'll call it a side quest because this is a gaming podcast. But I think that there is a difference between constructive criticism and, a critique and, oh, this game is trash. I saw there was as an example, I saw there was kind of a post in Guild, and I think a lot of people don't realize that there are actually a lot of creators from back in the day that are in there. So if you start talking trash about a game, they're going to see it.
Oh, I know. That's the worst thing.
And
I'm
it's
like, oh my
like,
God,
oh, you guys,
I want
no.
to delete you because this is just not very nice. And I'm friends with that person.
Right. So you can say this was about Space Quest 5 in particular. And again, another game that I didn't realize that there's a non-insignificant amount of people don't like because I loved it. And I don't love everything. I just don't talk a whole lot about the ones I don't love. But so somebody came on and called it a steaming pile of trash or something. And I was like, okay, you cannot like the game. So, and that's totally fine because not every game is for everyone. But have a little respect for the people that made it. I mean, I think it looks great. And, but if you don't like the art style, that's fine. You can say, I don't like this style. I didn't like this aspect of the gameplay, or this was a little frustrating for me. But there's a difference between that and just saying something mean.
Well,
So
I have a
that's
wish
kind of the
list.
line.
My wish list is this, and okay, I'm either going to gain listeners or lose listeners. But what I have to say is, did you make a game? Or like, how was your game and what were your challenges and what are the things you worked through? Because when you've done it and you've made one, you have every right to give any kind of criticism, hopefully constructive, to somebody else who's made a game as well, because you're in a mutually respectful place where both of you have made games and you both have some knowledge and experience. And that is where the back and forth constructive criticism can start. But unless you're like, I guess, a game reviewer, well, that's anybody, right? But like sitting back as like an armchair critic being like, oh man, that was stupid. It's like, okay, good. And what wasn't stupid of what you made? Now share it with the world and let them critique on it, because like maybe they think your shirt is stupid, and how much effort did that take on your part? Not very much. And how did that make you feel? Maybe not very good. So anyways, rant
Right.
over.
Well, just to kind of close up this particular part of the conversation, we'll get back to the music soon. I promise you guys. I think that what it comes down to is that it's really hard to create something. and you devote a lot of time to it. And you and I know enough creators that we know that it's a very difficult process. It's like having a child. It's essentially giving birth to this thing that you made, and it's beautiful, and you poured your blood, sweat, and tears into it. And to have people say just casually cruel things about it, I mean, that's got to be tough. And so, and these are people that are open to honest to goodness, critiques that are couched in respectful language. That's fine. I don't think there's a one of them that would say, "Oh, I can't take that." But just remember that behind every creative endeavor that you encounter is a human being, well, many human beings, and be kind to them. Think about how it would feel if somebody was saying it to you. With social media, people have unprecedented access to creators.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it,
And I'm just like,
it's,
why do we freaking think they even want to listen to us little minions? But oh my God, they do. They're just like, yes, connect with us, tell us. And
Mhm,
I'm just like, that is ballsy as heck to open
mhm,
yourself up that way during the creative process. Like when you're writing a piece of music or a piece of art or making anything, to show somebody during that process is a huge risk to take for yourself in
mhm.
your
Oh, yeah.
openness, just in the fact that you're saying, hey, I'm not done this yet, but I'm going to show it off to everybody in the anticipation that it's going to eventually be done. I mean, that's a lot.
hmm I mean, the bottom line is it costs nothing to be kind.
Mm-mm.
Just be kind,
Yep. Be kind,
criticize
rewind,
kindly.
always.
Exactly. You can criticize kindly. It's not, you can do it. It's not hard.
Sandwich that
Mhm.
criticism. Do it the executive
Here we
way.
go.
Give a
Compliment
compliment
sandwich.
and then give a criticism and then
Right.
give the closing compliment afterwards. That
There you
happy
go.
little constructive criticism is hidden right in
Yeah.
there, like a little bit of a pickle or something. It'll be fine.
Right. Oh, wow. It sounds like both of us really needed to say that. I feel good. I feel
It's good. We vented
that
to
was
you guys.
cleansing, right?
Well, that was
Yeah.
super cleansing. No, and it's a good way to segue into probably what is going to be the last little bits that we talk about during this episode, which is kind of like any closing thoughts you have either on music and how you feel about it, maybe a soundtrack you
Mhm.
haven't mentioned before, or a project that you're interested in that's out there, or anything else.
Oh gosh. Well, I have a little bit of a can I give you a little bit of a lightning round here? Would you be
Dude,
open to
yeah.
that?
I'm always open
Okay.
to a lightning round. Let's do it.
So so what I want to do is ask you a couple of questions about your favorite this or your favorite that.
Hmm.
And it's kind of minutia. So your favorite musical minutia, that's what we'll call this. So number 1, from any classic game, what is your favorite little I just got a point piece of music?
Oh, King's Quest 6. Easy.
King's Quest 6.
I have it. I use it as a reminder whenever I get a text message. I feel like I've accomplished something and gotten points. Yeah, seriously. It
Oh,
feels
that's really
so
good. I like that.
good. It does.
Is it a really satisfied little dee-dee-dee?
It is. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, it's quick thing. I know it's a lightning round, but I was actually at a party and Lori and Corey Cole were in the vehicle with me and we were driving to this party. This is like back a couple of years ago before COVID and everything else. And my phone rang and on my ringtone, it was the Leshy music from Quest for Glory 4. And Lori
Oh,
was in my
awesome.
vehicle and she said, "Hey, isn't that the music?" And she called what it was and said it on and I'm like, "Yes, it is." And
I
I was
love
like
it.
all super proud. I'm like, this feels like I'm not even on earth anymore. Like I've just like succeeded to this other realm. It was just such a trip,
Yay.
right?
Oh, that's so funny. I love it. That's fantastic.
So you're next. You have to answer that question, don't you?
Okay, well, for me, it's a tie between Gabriel Knight 1 because it sounds like State Farm is there,
I love it.
and that cracks me up every time,
Like a good
or
neighbor.
Freddie Farkas because
Mm-hmm.
score, it cracks me
I
up.
love it. Oh, I have
Those are
that
my
little
2
sound
faves.
bite. I like sending that one around. That's a
Mhm.
good one. Yep.
Okay, next one. Favorite opening screen.
Ooh, the music that hits you like right as the game sort of flashes up.
So think like when you boot up Colonel's Bequest. and you hear
Right.
that music as the magnifying glass appears, right? Right before you get to the copy
Mm.
protection, that kind of opening screen, the first opening
Mm.
salvo of music.
Ooh, yeah, that is a really good question. There's let me think about that. Really good opening music. Okay, my favorite is Leisure Suit Larry 7 at the very, very, very beginning of the game. And they're doing like the little Sierra intro, and he's carrying like the giant ball of Sierra intro on his back. And it just does the little doo, and it's like leading up into the game. And I was so excited for this game, Leisure Suit Larry 7 in particular, that like that's the one right there that like hits me just at that moment, like the intro into the whole game itself.
Kind of because of the attachment to the game and the series and the excitement and the anticipation of playing the new one.
And it looked like a real cartoon. I'm like, am I playing Tiny Toons? Because it looked so real.
Oh,
hmm and it was a text parser game because Leisure Suit Larry, they introduced the ability to have a text parser as well as the point and click for it. So I was like, there was just so many different reasons actually on
mhm.
this one.
Okay. And your last one is, oh, actually, shoot, I have two more. You can edit me out there. Um, second to last one, walking around music. So, like ambient music. So, you're wandering the mansion in Phantasmagoria, or you're wandering Silmaria during the daytime or the nighttime because they're two different pieces. What's your favorite?
hmm
I'm wandering around music. Or
Ooh.
sometimes it's kind of sounds, like just ambient noise. Like, what's your favorite?
The Gypsy Camp in Quest for Glory 4. I know I come back to that one a lot, but I really like
Oh,
that. The sort of like, there's the wolves howling, and it's like my grandma used to always call gypsies yipsies, right? So I'd be playing that game and I'd be like, oh, the yipsy music part. And she'd always come in and listen to the yipsy music. So I don't know, that one in particular.
it's a really pretty piece.
hmm Yeah. Yeah. Any of those scenes from that game, kind of walking around in the forest, right? It's scary.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's got that like, and you know what, and it take me to a night scene, like how the music changes when it's in the mansion in King's Quest 4 and it's nighttime,
Mhm,
and things like that, just like all the music that happens in there, the sound of the baby crying or the scraping of the chains when the miser is
mhm.
moaning, things like that.
I think for me, the answer would have to be wandering the museum at night as Lorbo.
Ooh, good call. Yeah,
I like
Dagger,
that.
very good. Yeah.
Yes, because you kind of got those little kind of staccato
hmm
moments, and you've got
They do that a lot in
a
that
couple of
game.
like
Yeah.
little creepy chords that kind of fade out. I love it.
hmm
Okay, and last one, because we're ending the podcast in a little bit. Um, what's your favorite closing credits music?
Ooh. Yeah, good one. That one's definitely Quest for Glory 2 Trial by Fire when you're flying off at the end of that game, moving on to the third
Mhm,
one there. It's like it's so epic and it's like such a cool accomplishment. It was such a difficult game to finish. I love the little cartoon that plays while they're doing the ending credits and you fly through. Everything about the ending of that game actually I think is absolutely brilliant.
I think for me, just because it was the piece that we would stop and listen to, my brother and I like the closing credits on King's Quest 1,
Ooh.
the EGA
hmm
remake.
hmm
And so we would play that and listen to the Condor music. That was our favorite. Shout out to Ken Allen for that. Love it. Thank you. And that was my favorite. There were so
hmm
many good ones, but for me, that holds the most nostalgic weight. So I'm going with that.
hmm Yep, good call. I think all around. And you know what? What else can stick in your head is stuff like the archaeologist song because it
Oh,
was
yeah.
actual singing. And I know you brought up that game anyways too, and various others, but
Hmm.
it's just it's so cool. It was so like I was really into Betty Boop and a lot of that retro stuff at the time. So to
Hmm.
hear it was just it's a nice little nostalgia kick.
So, speaking of the archaeologist song, a friend of ours has recorded a punk version of it,
hmm
and that will soon be available to own.
hmm
So keep your eyes peeled for a campaign coming to a place near you.
Yeah, it might even have something to do with charity. which could
It just
entice a
might.
couple of people. And it might have something to do with, I think there's a couple of other really cool songs on it too. We might have the Ballad of Freddie Farkas hanging around, and maybe some
Maybe.
spoken word stuff. I mean, you hear it here first vaguely. So.
Oh, yeah. Is that something we're supposed to talk about yet?
I don't know.
I
I
don't
don't
know.
see why not. It's for charity. Anything that's for charity,
Right.
you want to get it out there.
Well,
It's a good thing.
so basically, we have not announced it here. We have vaguely referenced it here. So we've announced absolutely nothing. So
Okay. I've been assured
just
nobody
going to
makes
leave
it
it
this
there.
far into a podcast episode. It's fine. There's like
Okay.
nobody can actually hear us at
Nobody's
this
listening at
point.
this
Yeah.
point. We can say
No.
whatever we want.
Yeah, absolutely. Secrets are out. It's no problem at all.
We can
Yeah.
say that Anna actually ghost wrote King's Quest and
Oh,
like nobody
totally.
would care. Yeah.
No. Yeah,
It's
that was the
totally true,
thing.
by the way.
I was a genius kid, right? I
You
was
really were.
able
Yeah.
to
hmm
just do so many cool things.
I think it's absolutely criminal. Nobody's given you credit for that, even after all this time. So,
All right. Thank you, Sarah. And thanks to you for hanging out with us while we chatted about music and classic games. What are some of your favorite music pieces from games that you like to play? Tell us about it. Send an email to mail@classicgamersguild.com. You can find us on Facebook. We're a page, we're a group, Classic Gamers Guild. Or send us a tweet. You can reach me at CGG Podcast or Paul at the Phantom Fellows. Do you prefer Instagram? Yep, we're there too, at CGG Podcast. And of course, the show wouldn't be able to happen if it weren't for our lovely Patreon subscribers. Yes, I mean you, all of you. If you hadn't checked it out yet, you can find us on Classic Gamers Guild on Patreon. We even put out bonus content occasionally. Don't forget, you can find us on Amazon Music, Spotify, Podbean, Google Podcast, Apple Podcasts, or just ask your smart speaker, hey, please play the Classic Gamers Guild podcast, and an episode will pop right up. So thanks for hanging out. Don't do a murder. Occasionally.